Well, yeah, I take all of this very seriously because we have a war between two nuclear superpowers. So this is a terrible situation. This is a war between Russia and the United States. The U.S. Does not have that many people on the ground. We don't know who really is on the ground in Ukraine from the U.S., but a lot of weapons are finance, intelligence. This is the U.S. is fighting this war, and this is quite clear. And that means two sides, each that have arsenals of 1,600 or so active nuclear weapons in a war that is of tremendous significance for Russia on its border, and so far where the United States is saying we will continue to do whatever it takes to defeat Russia. Well, when you have superpowers talking in that way, you better damn take it as a big threat. And I have not appreciated the U.S. policies in this all along, because I think I'm actually a little relieved in a weird way that Biden said this, because I felt this all along. I felt that the U.S. policy was on a path of escalation and that they didn't have an off-ramp in their minds. By the way, there's an obvious off-ramp, and this is the whole point of this war, if you really know something about it from the beginning. And the off-ramp is that NATO says we're not going to enlarge to Ukraine, period. That was the off-ramp that would have prevented the war. That was the off-ramp that would have stopped this war in March, when Russia and Ukraine, under the mediation of Turkey, exchanged documents and said publicly, as well as the Turkish mediators, we're close to an agreement. Many of us think that the U.S. rushed in and said, oh, no, don't do that. You know, we don't know ever with our government what's really going on, because they don't tell the truth. That just goes with the business of government, the way that it's viewed in Washington. But my feeling is that there are a lot of signs that the U.S. has been against a negotiated end to this war, because my interpretation is that this issue of NATO enlargement is a deeply held objective of the United States going back to the early 1990s. It's as deeply rejected by Russia since that time. I've watched it on both sides. That's why we have a collision course that continues to escalate, and why we should take damn seriously this nuclear threat. But why Biden should ask himself, okay, well, good, he's asking what's the off-ramp. I'll give him the suggestion. We should never have suggested NATO enlargement to Ukraine. And we should stop now, because Putin was very clear at the end of 2021. Here are my red lines. And the core of them, the core of the red lines was neutrality of Ukraine. And I called the White House then. I said, that's good. That's actually right. That's not just a concession. That is right for all sides. The White House said, we don't like that. We believe Ukraine has the right to join NATO. I said, it's not a right, because it impinges directly on Russia's core security perceptions. You better talk. No, we're not talking about that. Well, they better talk. That's my bottom line. They really had better talk about this issue. By the way, you can't have Zelensky negotiating with Putin. This is a war between the U.S. and Russia. And we need to have the President of the United States and the President of Russia talking with each other and avoiding Armageddon. That's, I think, the bottom line.
And Zelensky, by the way, said he wouldn't even negotiate with Russia insofar as Putin is in power. So Zelensky's taking care of that problem already, I guess.
Look, you know, I've studied the Cuban Missile Crisis all my life, all my professional adult life. I wrote a book about the aftermath of the Cuban Missile Crisis. I've looked at this issue in great detail. We came close to nuclear Armageddon exactly 60 years ago this month, by the way. And during that period, one of the provocations was Castro saying, fire, telling Khrushchev, make a preemptive strike, just what Zelensky's doing right now. you could kind of understand it. But you know what Khrushchev said when Castro said, you should make a preemptive strike? Khrushchev said, my God, this is supposedly our ally who would end the world. We better negotiate. We better speed up the negotiations because this is not stable. And when Zelensky says these things, I'm horrified. And yeah, they walked it back, but he didn't say sanctions, by the way. He said preemptive strike, and Zelensky has said similar things. And they talk recklessly, maybe understandably given their circumstance. I don't think so. I don't like it. And I think it shows how unstable this is. And by the way, during this whole period of this proxy war, where this is really a confrontation between Russia and the United States, we have pretended that it's a confrontation only between Russia and Ukraine, first of all. And we've said constantly, whatever Ukraine says, this is, that's the right thing. And so we're kind of giving carte blanche to the most extravagant, dangerous, provocative statements. And another example, okay, we don't know for 100%, but let me do a little quiz. Russia is in control right now of the Zaporozhye nuclear power plant. It is being shelled. We hear that's very dangerous, which it is. You shouldn't shell nuclear power plants. Now, one side controls the plant. So who is actually shelling the plant? Well, our media say, oh, we don't know who's shelling the plant. And they can't put one and one together to say, well, if Russia's in control of the plant, maybe they're not shelling their own plant. Maybe it's Ukraine shelling the plant. Well, I can tell you, I speak to a lot of people. It's almost surely Ukraine shelling the power plant. And we can't bring ourselves to express a simple truth. And that hurts because they continue to shell the power plant with impunity. And we should say, stop shelling the power plant. Yes, it would be good if you had control of the power plant, we could say to them, but don't shell a nuclear power plant. But we can't even find those words. That's the problem, because we're kind of faking the whole thing as if this isn't a US-Russia thing. Then we say, okay, do it, go, defeat Putin. That's great, that's what we want. Defeat the guy with 1,600 active nuclear warheads and several thousand more in reserve. Go ahead, go do it. As if this isn't our Armageddon that we're heading to. And that's really been a massive failure of this administration till now. One thing I've learned I'm 67 years old. I've been through a lot of US wars, Vietnam, Laos, Cambodia, Nicaragua, Iraq, Syria, Afghanistan, Libya, Yemen, and more. It's the job of the President of the United States to put on the brakes, because this country is a war machine at the top. We don't see it. We don't know it exactly. Eisenhower told us about it with the military-industrial complex. This country is a war machine. The main job of the President of the United States is to stop the war machine from making wars. And we are now in an escalation heading towards Armageddon, according to the President. That's not a spectator sport. That's his job, to keep us away from Armageddon.
And Professor Sachs, you said this is a war between the U.S. and Russia. We've heard threat after threat or call after call for an end to the Nord Stream 2 pipeline from Assistant Secretary.